Dominic Cummings is back and he appears to have political ambitions. Boris Johnson's former chief advisor is now backing Nigel Farage, who he says he's already advising, if only informally.
You see a scenario where Farage could be Prime Minister?
Oh, yeah. Could definitely happen now, yeah. Because the old system's just so completely broken.
Okay.
Like, it's broken enough that could easily happen. If he does what I'm suggesting and actually and sets out a path for how the reform is going to change, how reform is going to bring in people, how it's structurally going to alter, what it's going to build, how it's going to do policy, how it's going to recruit MPs, etc., etc. If he does that, then there'll be a huge surge of interest and support into the whole thing.
Is that what you said to him?
Yeah, obviously, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not anything particularly secret. It's what I've said to everyone for years. What I tried to do in Number 10, right? It's like bring in these people and try and change how the thing works.
Yeah.
So if he does that, then it will be super popular and it will be effective, and the old parties won't know how to cope with it. If he doesn't,
can I just ask you? Did he seem like he was kind of listening?
Yeah, I mean. Yeah.
Okay.
It's slightly Groundhog Day, isn't there? So this is Dominic Cummings, who thinks he's kind of like one of the smartest men in the country, or at least when it comes to politics. He seems to think he's more incisive than anyone else. And he, again, he's found this figure who has a way of speaking to the public, and he wants to be the power behind the throne. So he's sort of saying, Nigel Farage, he's got this connection to people, reform are doing okay, but he needs someone, I don't know, maybe like me, who could make it all work, who could make it all make sense. Now, whether or not Cummings could help Farage get elected, getting remotely close to Cummings would also come with extreme risks for Farage. And in that very same interview we just showed you with Sky, Cummings explained how he had already turned on his former ally.
He just started completely lying about everything and rewriting history. And then a lot of the media just kind of went along with it. That was bad. But then also, like on area after area, the way in which he just started doing the exact opposite of what we said we were going to do was bad, very bad. And so, me and a few other people said, okay, like, as you asked before about questions of responsibility, like, we put this guy in there with the 2019 election. We told people we were going to do a whole bunch of things. He's now doing the opposite. Okay, we should get rid of him.
So you got rid of him?
Yeah, got rid of him. And I think that was all to the good. When an elephant goes rogue, then there's not much else you can do. You have to remove them.
I could just so imagine. Well, I can't, because I think that Nigel Farage isn't going to trust him. But sort of say we do go into this scenario where Farage says, you know what, I do need a genius behind the throne who can sort of organise the party and come up with policies. I'm going to go with Cummings. I can just imagine Cummings sort of helping Farage with the campaign, working in Number 10, and then once again falling out with his boss, who is a very venal, self-serving egotist, and saying, oh yeah, I got him elected, but now I have to bring him down, right? I just feel like we're going to go round and round and round and round with Cummings latching on to people who have some sort of charisma, connection to the public, trying to mold them into his image, then falling out with them, then trying to get rid of them. And it's over and over again, and we just have to suffer through all of it. Cummings sort of talked about the Conservative Party in more general terms. This is the last clip we're going to show you before sort of discussing the intervention. Cummings did predict in the interview Badenoch wouldn't last long as Tory leader. He said he already knew of people organising to get rid of her, not particularly surprising. He did, though, suggest that for the Tory party, it might already be too late.
But also, it's quite possible that the Tories have just kind of crossed the event horizon and actually aren't salvageable. Like, everyone sort of assumes that because they've always been around, then like somehow there must be at least one last chance for them to turn things around. But it's possible that chance is actually in their past.
What do you think?
And doesn't exist.
They might be dead.
Might be dead, yeah. I mean, certainly they're on the way to that, right? On the current numbers from last week, there are no Tory safe seats. The Tories are all completely obliterated. If Kenny stays till next May, there's going to be almost no councillors left. There's going to be 100 people rallying around in Westminster with a functionally dead party. I mean, it's already intellectually dead. It's already financially bankrupt. It's already organisationally completely gone. but they've still got X thousand councillors running parts of local government. That's all going to get Thanos out of existence.
He does have a way with words. Helena, I don't trust Dominic Cummings to do what he claims, which is to sort of sort out British politics. He is kind of interesting, though. I was briefly subscribed to his Substack, but then I felt annoyed that it's £10 a month, which is too much to sort of read someone's long late night blogs. It did have some interesting sort of gossip about his time in government and his ideas. But it's potentially a bit Groundhog Day. What did you make of those interventions there?
I mean, what I would touch on first is just one comment he made about Boris Johnson just not doing the things they said they would do. And like, he did obviously break a couple of things, a lot of backbenchers who got in the way. But there's a kind of giant irony there of him essentially being patient zero for the downfall of Boris Johnson's career on what he claims was broken promises, only to replace him essentially from the Conservative Party with both Liz Truss and then Rishi Sunak, who didn't do anything that's in the 2019 manifesto. In fact, they completely diverted from the kind of social liberalism, really, that you got in the kind of the economic sense, right? Like kind of the centre ground, big state spending that you got from Boris Johnson's manifesto. I think even things like planning reform and rental reform all fell by the wayside. And I'm just like, well, no, you replaced somebody who wanted to do kind of big state conservatism in the kind of the old model pre-Thatcher, and replace them with people who want to do Thatcherism on steroids. Like, that wasn't in the manifesto at all, which I think is quite funny. On the Conservatives' fortunes more broadly in the long term, I think he's 100% correct. I think everything that he said there is bang on the money. And what is important about Kemi Badenoch specifically, a lot of people are pinning the future fate of the Conservative Party being essentially non-existent on Kemi Badenoch specifically. Or, well, she is the person who is destroying the Conservative Party long term. And she has loads of faults, and she is at least partly to blame. But there are obviously some really kind of systemic problems at play here that people just kind of don't want to admit. When it comes to Kemi personally, like, she's not winning anybody over because all she does is chase the votes of Nigel Farage's voters who don't want anything to do with the Tories because of previous failure, whilst not actually entertaining any of the problems that regular working people face in this country. She doesn't understand the problems that everybody faces on a day-to-day basis, which is why poorer people, for example, who did vote for Boris Johnson slightly, especially the older generations in 2019, have kind of moved over to Reform. That kind of coalition moved over to Reform UK. Migration is a big problem there as well. And when she actually talks about things that she believes is relevant and the failures of the administration, she's banging on about the Chagos Islands, and she's talking about things such as the national insurance increase. And most people don't really care. Most people want to see bills come down, the NHS improved, and things like that. And so she's really bad at communicating these ideas when she's busy talking about how she's picking slap fights with David Tennant on Twitter. Like, permanent Twitter brain does not electoral acumen make, unfortunately, Kemi, and that's the reality of it. The problem is that she isn't the only person who's like this. The Conservative Party is engulfed in this kind of groupthink that makes them completely disconnected from the electorate. So in the run-up to the leadership election, the Daily Telegraph have their own podcast called The Daily Tea. They did an interview with every single leadership candidate in the run-up to that election. I watched them all. I watched every single one. And not once, not a single time did any of them, when they were trying to dissect their reasons for their loss in 2024, none of them mentioned the cost of living crisis. Only James Cleverly even briefly talked about the NHS, the two biggest concerns of the electorate at the time. This is, again, Kemi isn't unique in being disconnected from the electorate, and it isn't unique in terms of not understanding where people's real concerns are, because these people are just so wedded to a broken and baseless economic model that nobody supports in this country anymore, that they refuse to see the wood for the trees when it comes to their own failures in government. And loads of them kept saying, we weren't conservative enough, we weren't Thatcherite enough. They extolled their virtues as having their political hero being Margaret Thatcher. Of course, this was to a Telegraph audience, right? But you'd think they'd be more candid speaking to their own people about their failures and the change in model, and they couldn't even grasp this. Nigel Farage, for all of his faults, at least he understands that if he wants to be this kind of Machiavellian force in politics trying to win people over against their better interests, then he at least has to at least pretend to understand people's concerns, or indeed to generally speak to the actual concerns that people face. And Tories live in such a giant bubble that they're so disconnected that they will never see it. They will never see it. And this is shown in the polling, right? I was looking at the YouGov crosstabs. Well, that shock poll there was a couple of weeks ago, which was maybe it was last week, that had the Liberal Democrats ahead of the Conservative Party. If you look at the under 50s, the Tories are in fifth place. Fifth place. It's irreparable. It's only the retired that vote for the Conservatives now. And these people are not long for this world, unfortunately. This is a dying base, right? And it seems to me that the only Conservative I've seen who's really, really tackled this head on, outside of Michael Gove touching on rental reform and maybe increasing the top rate of tax, is Simon Clarke. Simon Clarke's been really, really kind of desperately trying to tell the rest of the Conservative bubble that actually you can't just rely on the boomer vote forever. You have to go to young people, which means you need to build houses, you need to look at wages, you need to look at the cost of living, you need to look at the social contract, right? He's understood this. But the problem, of course, is he's another person who's privately educated, he went to Oxford University, he's from that same kind of political class of people, and no one trusts them anymore. So even if he did somehow have a more influence in terms of the direction of the Conservative Party, that still wouldn't win people over, because people remember the failure. They remember the 14 years of failure. They remember failure on both conservative and liberal principles. They don't have anyone left to vote for them other than people who vote for them out of habit over the age of 70. It's done. It's over, and Nigel Farage is going to be the one carrying the torch, and I do not see a way back. And I think it will only drop further from here. I don't think any change of leader can help. I don't think Boris Johnson would be able to help. I think it's cooked. I think it's terminally cooked.